There should be something here about now. Hi, my name's Sebastian Wallace. I describe myself online as an engineer, hacker, part-time writer, full-time robot. But I'm actually a managing engineer for Allstate's AI security team. Unlike James, I'd like to frighten all the managing engineers in here to actually run out of the room at the end of the talk. So hopefully that's my goal. There'll be a QR code at the end of the presentation. I'd like to start with something fun, though, just to break it up slightly. So, as I've said, I'm a managing security engineer. I hail from Shetland, where my mum lives, and she is a knitter. And she sent me a rather interesting text message, randomly, late at night. Now, I was obviously quite confused by this, so I said, "What do you mean?" And she sent me this. Now, if she'd left it at that, I wouldn't have said anything else. I would have done what I did on ChatGPT and sent it to her, but she had to add just a little bit more. So I kicked into the sun mode, and I was sarcastic back. But it was a really interesting idea. So I went onto ChatGPT and I immediately created a knitting pattern. I said, "Give me a standard teddy pattern," and I sent it to my mum. Said to her, "I'm sending you a PDF, just knit it and go ahead and do it and just don't say anything, just knit it and complete the pattern." 4 weeks later, I get this. Oh, no. It gets better. My immediate question was, "I need pictures, please." Now, this is a complete pattern. It's missing a left arm. It has no legs. It's missing an eye. It has a misaligned eye and questionable body. My immediate response was... Her immediate response was... So let's talk about AI security. So for those of you in the room that remember the 90s, some of these things here, you'll probably remember Netscape Navigator, PJ and Duncan, Winamp, Doom. I rocked Doom. It was brilliant. The 90s was an interesting time for security. We weren't called security researchers back then. We were called hackers, and we weren't very helpful people, apparently. But one of the things we did learn very quickly was it was the Wild West in the 90s. One of every 3 websites was vulnerable. When I look at AI security, I ask myself the question, is history repeating itself? AI is moving really fast, and we are deploying across every single market imaginable except knitting. Do we consider specific AI security needs? We have been here before, but I think because we've been here before, we understand what's coming. AI security presents some very unique challenges to developers. Prompt injection, model poisoning, data leakage, decision hijacking. These are all really interesting problems, and they're not traditional security problems. Model updates, they create silent changes. There are still traditional attacks within this field, such as vendor attacks. James mentioned quite a few of those. I've got one more example, but I don't think it'll be quite relevant anymore. Data loss through inadvertent ingestion. Copying and pasting your financial information onto ChatGPT is never a good idea. And agentic abuse. But don't panic. Organizations out there that have been on top of security are still on top of security when it comes to LLMs and agentic AI. The OWASP top 10 is, if all of you are out there, developers, you'll know the OWASP top 10 for vulnerabilities, web vulnerabilities. They do one for LLMs and agentic AI. I would recommend you just have a copy lying around because they are really good at identifying top-level vulnerabilities. They highlight vulnerabilities and mitigation strategies. So AI falls into 3 very distinct sectors, or very distinct buckets, if you will. Built, consumed, and embedded. And if you separate them into these 3, it becomes easier to identify the vulnerabilities. Built being the first one. This is if you are a machine learning shop or you are a shop which trains models through CPT or instructional training. That's something that our team experiment with. You've got some very specific vulnerabilities here. Training data poisoning, sensitive data exposure, supply chain models. If you put in sensitive data in your training model, it will vomit it out to a user at some point. Similarly to training data poisoning, you can accidentally ingest biased. And supply chain models. Models are not open source. They are black boxes. We can't see inside them. When a model is trained, the tensors and the weights are put into place, we can't observe them. So even a free and open model needs scrutiny. The next one is consumed. This is a 50-50 house. So in the consumed area, you're a product team and you're consuming someone else's AI. There's still control here, which is really good. You can still control what's being done. You can still control the models you're using, the policies you're putting in place for the guardrails on that end. But there are a lot of things that are still present. Prompt injection's one of the biggest ones, where a user can prompt inject your AI. Insecure outputs. We're forgetting sometimes that the model will output information, and that information at some point will hit a browser. We still can't trust that information because the browser could then go interpreting some script that has been injected in and come back out. And of course, sensitive data exposure. That's going to be a theme here. If you put sensitive data within these things, it will probably spit it out at some point. So don't treat LLMs like you would a user. Never trust the output or their input. Guardrails. I think guardrails was mentioned. We have something called 3-factor guardrails. An input guardrail, a cloud guardrail, and an output guardrail. Now, the input guardrail happens at the point before it goes out to the cloud. It's specific to the app. It checks for sensitive data, specific use cases, context switching, and special data artifacts that you don't want to send to a consumed platform. The cloud rail, this is a standard off-the-shelf thing. They call them policies in some instances. This checks for things like hate, illegal, violence, inappropriateness, etc. They are controllable. You can turn ones on and off. If you work in cybersecurity, you'll probably want to turn violence off because they think anything to do with hacking or threat modeling is violent behavior. And then the output. This is a stop button. This detects hallucinations, sensitive data, unsafe HTML, weird encoding, and error messages. And it should not generate a response. This is a good opportunity to put a retry in. Agentic capacity. I'm not going to talk too much about agentic, but it's a new world of pain for AI security. It calls actual physical resources. So it calls databases, it calls SharePoints. So permissions is a really important aspect of agentic. And tool scoping as well. Should it have access to something? For example, I really wouldn't give agentic access to the bash terminal if you really want a server by the end of the day. MCP is a model context protocol, if you ever want to look into that. RAG is retrieval augmented generation. I said it right, Kieran. That's not agentic. It's injected into the system's prompt. Deny by default. This is a brilliant starting point for any agentic permission. Simply apply this and add the permissions as it requires things. Really quick look at the Postman backdoor. This was a NPM vulnerability that was introduced through pushing up a version with the same name. 7 editions in, the Postmark backdoor was introduced, and all it did was introduce a blind courtesy copy to a compromised domain. The impact was roughly 55,000 emails per day, initially. It was very quickly discovered, thankfully. Classic impersonation attacks. The moral of the story, don't install random software from strangers, vet it, check it, be robust. Finally, embedded LLMs. These are the ones that keep me up at night. Embedded LLMs fall into 2 categories, actually embedded and external LLMs. So actually embedded are things that are in operating systems, plugins, development environments, office tools, the list goes on. The problem with these is you can't see the model, you can't see the prompt, you can't see the guardrails, but most importantly with embedded, you may not even know it's there. You could be informing a decision based on something you don't know is an LLM. Final one, and this is a huge one for DLP, data loss prevention, is external. Again, no guardrails, no controls over the model, no visibility of the systems prompt. You're providing the prompt. The only advantage you have, though, is you know it's there. Now, if you look at productivity, some of the LLMs out there do increase productivity. So you need to use a productivity chimney. Block the bad ones, put tight controls on the ones you want to allow, and the ones you've paid for, they're obviously within the trusted area. Very briefly, these tools, you'll see a lot more work developing over the coming years on these tools. Overwatch AIs are becoming a big thing. These are medium and small size models that will sit on your pipeline and watch context go through. Their primary job is to spot bad things. Pen testing, non-deterministic baseline testing of prompts is a nightmare, and we'll see a lot more tools hopefully over the coming years. Local LLMs. Who uses LLM Studio or Llama? Couple of people, brilliant. They're really good for local testing of models. You do need a bit of a beefy machine, but they don't burn through credits on Azure and AWS. If you're just arriving to AI security, you're early, so relax, you've got some time. Use security by design, trust but verify, don't install stranger software, and deny by default. And I'm going to end it on something else. With local LLMs, you can sometimes push them into what we call a hallucination pit. Now, a hallucination pit is when you overload it with context, it gets confused and hallucinates an answer. They won't work on Claude or ChatGPT because they have grounding prompts in the system's prompts, which basically say, hey, you're Claude, this is what you do. At the beginning of a normal operation, I asked it who the President of the United States was, and it answered pretty well. So I was like, okay, that information is in the model, I can use that as a test. About 45 minutes of prompt injection, prompt testing, context shifting, and a huge prompt. It started misbehaving, and I knew it was in a hallucination pit. So I asked it again. The formally sanctioned boxing contest was the best part. I don't know if, this is a personal opinion, but I think that would make an amazing Netflix show. My name's been Sebastian Wallace. It will continue to be Sebastian Wallace. If you want to go to my website, I tell my team have a thing. We don't scan QR codes because we're in security. So if you don't trust that QR code, you go to breakingbytes.org, where you can hear me complain, hack, and about hacking and AI. There's a specific page there, which I'll update, and it's got some specific stories on it about the ServiceNow embedded LLM and a bit more about the postmark. Thank you very much for your time today.